All right, Felix, the dust has settled through the first week of free agency. We're actually going to start getting to see kind of how the plan of action that these teams are going to take. Jordan Rodriguez, obviously friend of the show, friend of mine, wrote on a piece that, remember, we record on Mondays, wrote a piece for The Athletic about kind of going through free agency with the lens of team building and how close are these teams to Super Bowl? How close are they trying to move into playoff contention? And then, hey, we're just trying to, like, for the Cowboys, we're just trying to be better on defense. I think for the Jets, we're just trying to be better overall. So that's what we're going to take today. I love getting real nerdy about team building, and primarily from a defensive focus, obviously for me at match quarters. But I do think that, like, the free agency gives you signal on where this team goes. For instance, my team, the Broncos, didn't do anything. They just re-signed players, let a few guys go, but they feel good about their roster. And I think as a fan, and then somebody that kind of looks at it kind of in a global way, I agree too. I really like the roster. They needed to keep certain specific players. I think they're going to draft defensive linemen. I think they're going to draft the safety. I think that then obviously we need to draft and not just add to the receivers. I think there's three positions that I think when you go to the draft, it does not matter what you have on your team. You draft a receiver.
About 25 of them. There's receiver, D end, and like an offensive lineman and corner.
Draft those three positions, collect them like Pokemon, just get them all. Like you get whatever falls. Hey, the best player on our board right here happens
There's
to be
about 40 draftable players. There's about 25 that can really play. And so where can we find them throughout the first 6-ish rounds? And then maybe there's a guy in the 6th or 7th that can really get things rolling.
Exactly. So we just talked about the Broncos. Let's pivot to you kind of just in right before we came in. Justin Fields is going to get traded to Kansas City. I actually like this because we don't know necessarily when Mahomes will be available. I know they lost, what was it, Minshew? Wasn't Minshew the backup? So they ended up losing Minshew. So they need a backup. I think, to me too, we've talked about this. Remember, I can't remember what episode it was, but we've talked about this before. If you're going to have a backup quarterback, have one that's like a complete wild card. And I feel like this is exactly right up the alley.
Right, and you and I were just talking right before we came on, and like Andy Reid's probably going to have him in on a package or two, whatever, throughout the season, just because Andy Reid and like whatever they can do on that inside the 5-yard line, why not? If you have Justin Fields on the roster, might as well use him in some type of capacity. But also with Mahomes coming off of the injury, is he going to be 100% ready week 1, 2, 3, even into the first 6 weeks of the season, just based off of where the injury happened? Knowing the type of athlete and the type of guy Patrick Mahomes is, I think he's pressing for week 1. In the event that you need to turn around and hand the ball off to Kenneth Walker III or Amari DeMarcado, I think Justin Fields can be another piece in that, and he offers another athleticism that, like, all right, fine, for the first 4 weeks of the season, you're going to have to deal with this, but then also Patrick Mahomes is coming back at some point, and then we're going to work him in whatever he needs to do as the starter in week 6, 7, 8, and whatever that looks like.
Yeah, and really, if you look at it, I was a little bit. We talked about last week. It's a little bit jarring when you look out there, and it's going to be Noel Williams and Christian Fulton. They only have somebody was talking. They only have 3 corners on this roster.
Yeah.
So I think, like, in terms of defense, like what you look at it globally in terms of where the Chiefs are, I think the Chiefs are very, very content with their offensive roster. I thought they were really getting back Tyquan Thornton. I thought was really good. They wanted to get him on some of these deep plays. It just it wasn't panning out. Having him back, having a higher ceiling in the run game with Kenneth Walker, I think is going to be really good for them. I think you're going to see just more of with Eric Bieniemy back, a more commitment to running the ball. Now, defensively, there's still some holes. I think that they're going to, again, we just talked about it. They're probably going to draft a receiver. They're probably going to draft an edge, and they're probably going to draft a corner. I mean, I think you got to just with this Shamari Connor as a safety. Again, we've talked multiple times on this show about we're still waiting for Jaden Hicks to show up. I keep getting told that the 4th rounder from a couple years ago is really, really good, but he can't earn a starting spot. I like the Olahi Gilman addition. So this is kind of setting the table here for what we really want this show to be, is kind of, we're going to go through these big trades. What do they mean for that team? And what does that necessarily mean, like, heading into the draft? Because I think the problem with framing the draft without using context from the free agency is that you're just kind of in a fantasy land. And I think I think when you really whittle it down to what did they add and then where are they positionally in the draft order, I think you get a better feel for what they're going to do, primarily in the early rounds, because let's be honest, it's the only rounds that really matter.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Pittsburgh. I think the national shows, it's kind of interesting where they sit in the conversation. They hire Mike McCarthy. It's like, all right, their ceiling is 9 wins. And internally they believe that. And I don't think that the Steelers believe that, because you can't, going into a season, at least from a football perspective, maybe from a business perspective. We can talk about that at another rate, or at another perspective. But I think they think they're going to win the Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers coming back, if he does come back, or with Will Howard, they're going to be starting towards building something with a guy like Michael Pittman Jr., building around DK Metcalf, and just a bigger offense moving forward. I'm not necessarily a believer in that, but seeing the way that football's moved in the last 2-3 years of like, no, yeah, everybody needs to be fast, but also we need some just dudes who can hit. Pittsburgh's offense looks like they're pushing more into that direction and leaning more into that. And Aaron Rodgers did play well when he was playing with that type of offense last year.
Yeah, it will be interesting. Look, the whole deal last year was they wanted to collect like a bunch of tight ends. You know, that was the big thing. We saw it like every week. They would take a picture of all 5 tight ends with Arthur Smith. I think it's going to be rolled back. I do think Mike McCarthy wants to run the ball. Rico Dowdle, he knows how good he is. And really, I like the Dowdle pickup with Jaylen Warren. It kind of gives you kind of a pretty dynamic backfield there. I think the guy that's going to really blossom under Mike McCarthy is going to be Pat Fairmouth. I think he'll come back and have a little bit. Darnell Washington is he's cute at the end of the day. He's a 300-pound tight end, but in terms of sustainability and in the red zone, he's really good. But I think this is going to be a 12
third tight end.
Yeah, yes. But I think that, to me, now you really look at this offense. This offense is not bad at all. And I think if they can get Rodgers back and maybe push the ball a little bit down, I think the problem with DK Metcalf last year was just you had no intermediate passing game with him. It was all like basically deep shots, right? And Rodgers was trying to get the ball out. I mean, almost hysterically fast, right? Like especially at the beginning of the year, it was like his A.2 was like, like barely 2 yards or something like that. It was just something stupid. Now, obviously, he started pushing the ball down the field as the year went on, but Michael Pittman gives you that intermediate route running tree that you need. And then DK with the big body. Look, I think Mike McCarthy knows how to use those big body receivers. I think that's going to be really good. And then defensively is where I think they had a really weird signing in Jaquan Brisker, and I don't necessarily know what it means. I like Patrick Graham. I know you like Patrick Graham because obviously he is, you like him, and then you don't, obviously, because he's terrorized the Chiefs at the Raiders. But Jamel Dean is he fits the mold for the Steelers. Older DB, established. He's played in kind of a cover 3 scheme. But the Jaquan Brisker and Deshaun Elliott pairing, those are the same guys.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling one of those guys is going to end up playing nickel, and then they're going to be able to be really interchangeable with Jalen Ramsey and kind of move him around to where they want him to be. So I'm interested, because Brisker to me was the Bears didn't really know. He was really good with Eberflus. Coverage took a step back last year with Dennis Allen. Allen pretty much used him as a de facto like box safety towards the end of last year. So I'm just really, really interested on what all this is going to mean for the Steelers going forward.
And especially losing a guy like Mike Tomlin. I know that he wasn't exactly in the X's and O's and wasn't calling defense forever, but having that patron over your entire defensive philosophy for the last, I mean, at least he was the guy that held on since that 2010 legendary, those Troy Polamalu days, those James Harrison days, and he's that guy that you can kind of hold on to and say, like, all right, bringing it back. But you're bringing it back with guys like Cam Hayward and TJ Watt saying, like, you got to stay healthy on the wrong side of 30 with guys who haven't. And so, like, that's what's really, really weird when you're Pittsburgh. You're like, all right, Mike Tomlin's out. He's moving on. We're doing something new. Are you, though?
We're relying on a lot of older players.
Yeah.
A lot, which, I mean, that's been the Steeler
Pittsburgh
way, but we're relying on the fact that Aaron Rodgers decides he wants to come back, which I think he is. This is typical Aaron Rodgers. He's just going to push it around and kick the can down until he has to make a decision, and then he'll come back. I don't think that Mason Rudolph or Will Howard is going to start the season for them. Yeah. I think they know that. That's why they didn't go and try and get a quarterback, right? Yeah. Like, that's why they didn't try and go get Kyler Murray or Tua, because Tua, I actually think, would be a pretty decent fit.
They play outside.
Yeah, that's true. But still, I still think in that he wants to run a lot of slants and curl flats. Like,
they play outside.
Okay.
So does Baltimore and Cincinnati and Cleveland.
Yeah, you're right. Outside. In the North, never mind. I'm sorry. I can admit when I am wrong. All right, let's move to let's talk about the Jets. Right. So we just talked about.
Get it out of the way early on. Just like, all right, Steelers fans, we got you early. All right, Jets.
Yes, we got you. Let's pivot to the Jets. This is the exact thing that Detroit did for Aaron Glenn in their rebuild. Was essentially, we're going to try and remodel the entire defense in year 2 to give you a kind of a better fit. I thought they did a really good job. Look, they lost Quinnen Williams, which I think is kind of devastating. Sauce, to me, for what they got, I think you take that 100% of the time. Now, that's saying that you drafting players and these players are going to end up being good. But I do think.
But I don't think Indianapolis is going to be very good on the other side of it, because just with the whole Daniel Jones situation and whatever their team looks like. I mean, it's the AFC South. They might win their division 2 out of the next 3 years, but still, I don't hate that position. So you're absolutely right. Take the 2 first-round picks for a corner.
Yeah, and you just assume, hey, it's a coin flip. Hopefully one of them hits. But I thought the move to get Tavondre Sweat cleans up a lot of what they want to do in the middle. So Quinnen gives you a little bit more of a dynamic inside presence, but at least with Sweat, you're not going to get moved in the run game. I mean, Denard Wilson, who was with Tennessee, essentially just said, look, at one point of the year was like, we're going to run a 2-man front, and it's going to be Jeffrey Simmons and Sweat, and we're going to make people pay the Sweat tax. Like, you're just not going to be able to run inside on us. It's just not going to happen. And so I think what that for them is they're going to kick, they're going to pick that up. They got rid of Jermaine Johnson, who he was a first-round draft pick for them. Depending on how you feel about it, he was good, not great. I think what they ended up saying was that we need a true nose to fit what we're going to double down on stopping the run. We need a true nose. We got that. Then they signed David Onyemata and Joseph Osai. Neither one of them are sexy. Both of them were in the ESPN's top 100 free agents. And then they got Kingsley Ngabare, who, by the way, is another guy where some of the Packers felt like maybe we should have gave him a couple more years to develop, but it's like, hey, you kind of at the end of your rookie contract. So we're looking more for being just better in the aggregate. This was already a defense that was not terrible at stopping the run. Now they're going to try and be really good at stopping the run. I just don't know how much pass rush they're going to have.
Quick side note on the Packers. They're losing a good bit, aren't they, with Enigbari, with going to the Jets. They're losing Rashawn Gary, which I know he up and down production. Micah's going to be out. They lose Jeff Hafley defensively. What does the Packers defense look like if everybody's like, oh, you guys are really good, let's just nab up all your players in free agency?
Well, they still have a problem at corner. I mean, look, Keyshawn Nixon has been just playing above his pay grade for the past couple years. I like Javon Bullard at nickel. Carrington Valentine is your other corner, who, by the way, is a guy that you just can't find a way to keep as a starter. So you have these guys where they're not necessarily starters for you, right? That Keyshawn Nixon is, I think he's good. They still have to figure out the other corner. They traded Quay Walker for Zaire Franklin, right? Like you basically said, let Quay Walker walk. You're getting Zaire Franklin, who again is you traded for. He's kind of heading towards being a little bit of an older player, but more of an established Mike, where I think Edrin Cooper can kind of be a more dynamic player. And then what you're really looking for is we need Lucas Van Ness to figure it out. You were drafted to be an absolute monster. I need you to figure it out. Micah Parsons is going to be back. He's going to be fine. Javon Hargrave tells me that this is a defense that's going to play a lot of wide nine. They're going to keep what Hafley had done. Even though Jonathan Gannon is there, I think Gannon, you look at his history, yes, he was attempting to play Fangio adjacent schemes. Yes, they played a 3-high safety show in Arizona, which, again, they had to. They had to be weird in Arizona. That defensive roster was terrible when he got there. It was a top 10 defense before all of the injuries in the secondary this year. And when you're in something like that, it's really hard to just be like, oh, let's just play more base, which they were doing more this year than they had ever had before. A lot less 3-high safety stuff. But this, to me, with the Hargrave, Devontae Wyatt, Micah Parsons, and Lucas Van Ness, this is a wide nine defense. And I think they just needed a Mike. But you're right, if they don't fix the corner spot and they don't get a legitimate kind of lockdown guy and let Keyshawn Nixon kind of either play to the field, or if he's going to be your boundary guy, let him play the boundary. But I think we like Evan Williams. I think we like Xavier McKinney, but they got to figure out that corner spot.
Right. All right. Let's go to the Las Vegas Raiders, who moved all over the place in free agency, but let's talk about some of the players they traded for. Taron Johnson from Buffalo, but then they bring in Quay Walker from Green Bay, like we just talked about, Nakobe Dean, and Eric Stokes also from Green Bay. So they leveled up with a lot of players that I think that you look over like with some of the better teams in the NFC at least and say like, oh, he's making a few plays for him. The Raiders are like, we just make those same plays over here.
Yeah. Well, and this is an interesting move to me. Now the whole look, the elephant in the room here is that Maxx Crosby. We didn't lead with it, even though we easily could have. Maxx Crosby deal falls through, the knee issue. The only little tidbit that I have on this that was kind of like okay, this makes sense, is that everybody was really focused on the Cowboys making a move for Maxx Crosby, but then they never really did, and they always kind of poo-pooed it and were like, nah, we're good. We don't want that. And then you come to find out that the team doctor for the Cowboys is actually who did he's the one that was kind of involved in the whole Maxx Crosby knee deal. Maxx Crosby's from Dallas also, by the way. I don't know if a lot of people know this. He's from the same high school as Post Malone, which I think is hilarious. I think it's Colville Heritage, which
makes sense.
That's hilarious, by the way. But they knew they had this information. So this is another thing too. Like if you're looking outside in, a lot of these teams have information that we just don't have. And then when things like this happen and you're like, what the hell happened? It's like, okay. They had some information that these other teams didn't. I really think too, the Ravens got cold feet a little bit. I don't know. Like to me, what this looks like is that they are like, we've never given up this much before. They've
never traded a first round pick before. That's just, and like, it was just not something the Ravens do in a similar vein to like what Pittsburgh's doing. Baltimore's like, we might as well, we're holding on to, we got a Ravens guy as our head coach. We brought him back. We might as well just keep everything with our organization the same. And we can get Trey Hendrickson on top of that.
Yeah. And man, they went out and and so for the Raiders, look, they're not in cap hell. We knew this, like they just had a ton of cap space to begin with. So it's not like they're in cap hell now that they have to kind of absorb the Maxx Crosby deal. I think you just basically are like, okay, we're just going to roll with it. But when you look at it, they signed Kwity Paye, which is a guy we didn't necessarily mention, but I'm more confused with the Walker Nakobe Dean getting the band back together. These are the same player, right? I mean, it's basically the same player. I think Quay Walker was producing a little bit. He at least was able to solidify himself as a starter. Nakobe Dean basically got beat out by Zach Bond, who happened to be a Pro Bowl or an All Pro, but then also Jihad Campbell, who they wanted kind of as that hybrid guy. So yeah, you got kind of player A and then you get player B. They're really in the same mold. What this tells me is they're going to be trying to play a lot of base,
right.
a lot of base. And even if they go to more of a 4 down, I don't know. It's a very, very interesting dynamic to have both of those guys when you're sitting there and your secondary is Darian Porter, Palomau, Jeremy Chin, Eric Stokes, who you mentioned they got from the Packers last year. They brought him back. And then Taron Johnson. I like Taron Johnson. We just don't know the health of Taron Johnson. I thought it was really interesting. Jim Leonard let him go at the Bills, but I think that's more or less if you really look at what the Broncos wanted. Jaquan McMillan was their nickel. They really want a coverage nickel. They don't want a kind of hybrid nickel like Taron Johnson because they're going to play a lot of match 3. They're going to play a lot of 5-man fronts. So it doesn't really fit with what their nickel structure is. But this is a defense that's going to be, it's going to be a lot of single high because you're not going to play with Jeremy Chin. Now, they have the ability to maybe get a safety in the second round. But I need to see the draft before I have a final say on how I feel about this.
Yeah. They're maybe they still move around with Maxx Crosby. There's still some availability, and like there's some teams in that teenish range that would like him. Like Baltimore was perfect right there, where they had the 14th overall pick. Go get yourself Dylan Thieneman or something like that. But got to figure some other things out. But Maxx Crosby's still dealable. Maybe the Cowboys make a move. Jerry Jones, like it would be the perfect headline on draft night, where it's like, give me Maxx Crosby for a 1st-round pick right before we
not
get started.
even. I think now you could probably get him for a second.
That too,
maybe even.
But Jerry might overpay because it's Jerry, and he's like, if everybody's offering a 2nd-round pick, I'll give you a 1st-round pick.
Yeah, and so I do think it will be interesting to see if Maxx Crosby lasts until the draft. I have a sneaky suspicion he does. I think the Raiders are just going to say, hey, it is what it is. We're sorry, and then just kind of move on. Everybody just kind of moves on.
Right. All right. Buffalo, they kind of revitalized their offense. They really I think we talked about it last week, where I said that DJ Moore is probably like an average number 1, but it really stabilizes their number 1 offense when you have a guy like Josh Allen as your quarterback. And it'll be interesting to see what else they do with their offense, because obviously running the ball has been really, really good for them. But then they've been trying to get receivers over the last couple of years, whether it's Amari Cooper, they lose Stephon Diggs. Khalil Shakir is fine in the slot, but he's Khalil Shakir. Now they get a guy like DJ Moore who can really lead the receiving core, and kind of got lost in the shuffle in Chicago.
Well, and I think he'll help Keon Coleman out.
That part.
And I know we've mentioned this on here. I've always had it. Look, I love Keon Coleman. As a person, I think he's hilarious, and I hope he sticks in the NFL, because I think he's just a character that sometimes you get players that are just characters, and he's one of those that I really like. But he had trouble with separation in college, and if you have trouble in separation in college and you're a bigger receiver, that's not
fast enough. It's just that simple.
Yeah, it's just that, and that's not going to disappear, right? Like, that's just not going to disappear when you get in there. I think that this is definitely one of those where it's like, okay, now you have a legitimate number 1. He's not an elite number 1. We're not saying he's a top 5 receiver in the NFL, but we know that he can play as the number 1 receiver and be good. He raises the floor now for the Bills offense.
He has the chance of having like one of the top 5 receiving performances every year, because if you remember, he had Justin Fields for that 1 year, but he had like 8 catches for 230 yards on a Thursday night game against the Commanders. Like, wait, what? DJ Moore? And then he had a couple of games with the Panthers. It was like, oh God. And that was with Joe Brady. So like, he has a couple of chances. He's not going to be, like you said, not a top 5 receiver, but he could have like a top 5 performance twice a year.
I think if he could just get 1,000 yards, I think it cleans up Khalil Shakir, where he's not constantly having to just catch bubble screens all the time. And I think it just opens up the offense for you.
Like he doesn't even stay healthy the whole year. That's 12 games.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they did a good job. They really, let's be honest, they needed one position and they went and they traded for it and they got it and they didn't overspend for it because we typically see a lot of these guys overspend. Now let's shift to the defense really quickly because they picked up Bradley Chubb, who the guy that is lost in all of this. Actually, they signed last year, which is Michael Hoyt, who is now going to be in a defense like under Jim Leonard, who loves to have Island of Misfit toys. Like he loves to have these weird hybrid defenders. He was doing it when he was in Wisconsin. He cleaned up that secondary in Denver, which is, again, you look at it and it's like, we need to raise the bar for our safeties. What did they go? They get CJ Gardner-Johnson, who is going to be a great down safety for them. They added Geno Stone, who good, not great, could never figure out if he wanted to be good or bad with Cincinnati. It was pretty much week to week. I think everybody's excited about Cole Bishop. You add D. Alford, who is a little bit more of a coverage nickel than is a pure hybrid, which is what they had. So everything here, to me, this is a team that, again, they're going to be scary. And you're not going to want to play in Buffalo. I know they're going to be indoor here pretty soon, but this is not a team that you're going to want to face later in the season.
Right. It'll be very interesting. All right. We talked a good bit about Green Bay getting a lot of their players hoovered up. Let's talk about some of the teams that have been moving in free agency a good amount. Starting off with Washington, when you were talking about your boy Jim Leonard, he was supposed to get his boy Leo Chenal, but he signed a 3-year deal with Washington, another Chiefs defensive player, out of the door. But they also bring in Odafe Owe and Nick Cross on their defense. Really, if you're Dan Quinn, you're trying to save your job here, and you might as well do it with the things you know, and that's defense.
Yeah, look, this is a defense that needed to get rebuilt from top to bottom. I think they're excited about Trey Amos, who was a second-round pick. I think they really kind of fell into Mike Sainristil. He was supposed to be their nickel. Amik Robertson played really well at the nickel spot for Detroit, was kind of forced to kind of play some outside corner at times. Look, I like Nick Cross. Nick Cross is very much a kind of high floor guy. He's not going to be high ceiling, but he's a high floor guy. He's going to be able with Durante Jones. Now, remember, that's the key here. This is not going to be Dan Quinn's defense anymore. This is going to be Durante Jones. So what do you get? You get Nick Cross, who's a really good box defender. You get Amik Robertson, who can kind of man up that nickel spot because, again, we want a coverage nickel. You get Chaseon and Owe, who are kind of these like pure rush hybrids, right? They don't really have, like exact, they can do a bunch of different things. And then look at your Mike linebacker and your Will linebacker. Frankie Louvu is the poster child for the hybrid Will linebacker, the walk down hybrid off ball edge defender. I mean, he was an all pro defender. And then who do you add? Leo Chenal, who at times was playing 3 technique. Yes, you heard that right. 3 technique for the Kansas City Chiefs. So what they got are a bunch of pieces that can do a bunch of different things, which fits right into kind of Durante Jones and that Viking style. Now, I'm interested. How aggressive is this thing going to be? And then how kind of crazy is it going to be? But I think this is a defense that definitely raised their floor. And remember, this was a team that went to the NFC Championship just a year ago with a healthy Jaden Daniels, and now you redo the running back room. So these guys are signaling positive for me.
You got March Madness on the brain. I hear you, Cody.
Yeah, I know. I almost said NCAA championship.
So he's a football guy, but hey, even in March.
Hey, I watched like 5 minutes of the bracket show just so I could see what the bracket looked like. To me, I don't even know any sport exists. Like I had no idea we had baseball world championships going on. I heard it was cool. Didn't even realize the Olympics were on that much either. So I'm literally like one thing, and it's only ball.
All right, let's talk Jets. Didn't get any interceptions on defense. All right, let's go get Nashawn Wright from the Bears, who that's all he does is get interceptions.
Right.
So honestly, that's the only thing I would have done. Like if you're in Madden, that's what exactly like we didn't intercept the ball. Who intercepted the ball the most? He's a free agent. Boom, give him the most money as much money as he wants. Blank check it. And, all right, hold on. But also, Nashawn Wright is a New York Jet because he intercepted a lot of footballs last year. They intercepted none.
Yeah, and I think too. So we didn't talk about the other trade involved in this, which is Minkah Fitzpatrick. So look, all of this screams that these guys are going to play a lot of cover one. And I mean, look, they got Jarvis Brownlee, got that dog in them.
They might have the same record as last year, but also they'll have 10 interceptions. But guys, we're so much better, aren't we?
I mean, if you just get 5, look, if they end, let's just say they get an interception every other game. So like they end up with let's just say 8 interceptions. Yeah. That is a positive mark in this. They completely redid this defense. Somebody that we didn't even talk about is look, they traded for Harrison Phillips last year. So your interior is going to be Harrison Phillips, defensive, run game specialist. Tavondre Sweat, the sweat tax. You are not getting anything in the A gaps. You have Inyamata, who is kind of like your quick 3, in which you need to have. You have Will McDonald. You have Joseph Asai. So you're not dropping. These guys are not dropping into coverage. This is not a 3-4 seesaw front where, hey, we're gonna reduce one way, kick a guy out into cover. No. This is a 5-man front that is going to be heavy-handed. We're going to hit you in the mouth. And then we're going to have Sherwood, who's been playing relatively good. And we're going to get old man DeMario Davis. We're basically going to get Bobby Wagner, another version of Bobby Wagner.
Bobby Wagner
is going to get 100 tackles in the A gap.
And then read Bible scriptures after the game. And it'll be all good. You guys will lose by 13. But you'll feel a lot better as a franchise.
But so you go further, but you really look, I thought it was really interesting that Aaron Glenn came out and he tried to throw Wilkes under the bus a little bit of hey, no, this wasn't my scheme. We're going to go back. No. You were running your scheme. This was cover one through and through. You just couldn't survive in it. And you didn't make the pivot to run more split field coverages, even though statistically they were better than what your cover one was. But if you look at this, Nashawn Wright is going to be a big boundary corner. You've got Brandon Stevens, good in man coverage, not necessarily great at zone. Minkah Fitzpatrick can be that kind of lurker around. You can figure out what you want to do. I think they were really high on Malachi Moore. You have then you have Jarvis Brownlee as your nickel, who again can play that kind of man style of defense. So I think they knew exactly what they wanted to do. They want to play more man. They cleaned up. They got the Dylan Parham, and then, but still, at the end of the day, let's talk about quarterback. It's Geno Smith. This is going to be, if they win 6 games, that should move the needle for Jets fans.
It is nice to see Geno go back. It's nice for the full circle. I didn't write back, and now you're all the way back, and it is nice for Geno. All right, the Raiders, I do like where they're moving. I know you're kind of interested to see where they go on defense, looking like they're going to play a lot of base with Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker. But offensively, they signed Tyler Linderbaum, the best center in football, or second best, because Creed Humphrey exists. But at any rate, Tyler Linderbaum is I think that sets them a really nice foundation to bring in Fernando and be all right, this is a serious offense, and then also bring in Jalen Naylor, which I think is a sneaky, really, really good signing.
Yeah, so we focused a little earlier on their defense, but then offensively, I think you hit the nail on the head. Signing Tyler Linderbaum cleans up their interior, which I think we talked even earlier. The interior offensive line was actually kind of really good for them. So I think you need that more downhill run game. You're going to be able to get that. And then Naylor, to me, is we got to figure out something. We don't have a number 1 receiver. I would assume that they're going to try and draft one early, either in the 2nd or the 3rd, to kind of come in. Typically, those guys don't pan out early, but kind of as a project for our number 1 receiver. And then Naylor gives you that ability. He quietly has had some really good years as the number 3 target with Addison and Jefferson with the Vikings. He's had some really big games because if you sleep on him, he's going to find some space. And so I think this is kind of their answer to Jacoby Myers. So yeah, they definitely, and again, we know this, I'm wearing a Broncos hat. You've got your Chiefs Super Bowl thing behind you. Look, I don't want the West getting any better. but I feel like they're moving in the right direction. I still don't believe in that secondary, and I don't know necessarily what that defense is going to look like.
Right.
I want to see that. They're also going to have a rookie quarterback, but this is a team that, hey, it could be like the Patriots in year 2. Mendoza kind of hits, and then they add a couple more pieces, and then now we're looking at a playoff team.
Well, yeah, let's hate on a West team if we can give one praise. Where does that kind of leave the Chargers? Like, if we expect the Chiefs to kind of be rebuilding and retooling, and I mean, they have Patrick Mahomes, and so they have the biggest head start in that case. And then the Broncos they have a really good foundation with Bo Nix coming back. They're a championship caliber team. The Raiders, I like where they're moving. They hopefully have their franchise quarterback coming to them with the number 1 overall pick. The Chargers are kind of stuck in limbo of like, yeah, no, we're a playoff team, but once we get there, Justin Herbert's kind of whatever. But can we sustain throughout a season like we did last year? Because every year everybody gets hurt because that's football. That's what happens, and inevitably we Charger it.
Yeah, and look, they're trying to rebuild. Look, I think everybody likes their tackles. Trevor Penning is a really good running. They got him. They traded for him last year. He's a really good run blocker. They got Bidaz this offseason along with Cole Strange. So I think that they really tried to pick up their interior. This is a defensive line that I think moves a little bit. Mekhi Becton just was not. Look, this is another one of those of like, was he a fit? He's a fit in the Greg Roman, just Mauler scheme. He wasn't going to be a fit in kind of the crack toss and the wide zone scheme that you're going to see now that Mike McDaniel is there.
He ain't pulling too much.
Oh, no. Yeah, he's like the Falele guy with the Ravens. Like, no, he's down blocking. He is down blocking and he is base blocking, and he is not doing anything else. So they've kind of like Cole Strange with Miami last year, and then you have Alec Ingold who's coming in. I think a super sneaky pickup this offseason was Charlie Kohler he was kind of the third guy in that Raven scheme that likely was the hybrid guy. He left, and then that's again, the Ravens are losing a lot on offense too, but he's somebody that I would look to. But to your point, they just added Dalvin Tomlinson, who is he's an above average interior defensive lineman. They have not added anything on defense. This is going to be the same defense with an NFL rookie defensive coordinator. Yes, he was there in 2024 as a safeties coach, but he was at Western Michigan last year. And I think Harbaugh's trying to catch lightning again in a guy like McDonald and Minter. And then I think they feel like Chris O'Leary's kind of that next guy.
All right. The Patriots, another team who had a lot of cap space, but also has a great head start being in the Super Bowl this past season. They get Romeo Doubs to fill that role, and I think in a similar way, but in a younger way, like a DJ Moore of like, we need a number 1 receiver, especially with the Stephon Diggs situation going down the way it did. And we need a number 1 receiver. He may not be the number one for long term, but also he fits the bill for a guy like Drake May if he's going to play like he did last year. And then defensively, they bring in Kevin Byard, who, all right, let's just bring an adult to the defense and try and at least one on the field, because Mike Vrabel's like, all right, let's figure something out that way. And then Elijah Vera-Tucker to shore up their offensive line, whether that be depth-wise, and then just trying to help out with Will Campbell on the other end with those T-Rex arms.
Yeah, Dobbs to me is, again, he just is kind of like Stephon. I mean, he's Diggs, right? He's going to run that route tree. Keyshawn Booty is going to be able to go vertical. Matt Collins is going to be your blocking slot. And then you're going to sneak him in there in 12 and 13 personnel, and he's going to run a vertical, and people forget that he's fast because, he's the guy that shows up barefoot. People are like, oh, he's kind of weird. I'm going to forget about him. And then, oh, by the way, here's a 30-year. He was a ringer, and he was a ringer for them all year. People would just fall asleep and forget that he would be out there. And then he would go for like a 30-yard bomb. The offense didn't necessarily need to get fixed. They needed to have somebody that could come in and take over for Diggs. I think they found that with Romeo Doubs. I mean, they kind of run the same thing. The one interesting note that I will put here is defensively. Kevin Byard is going to be pushing over 30. So to your point about bringing an adult in the room, yeah, I got that. They really like Craig Woodson. I just was, the Hawkins safety, like you traded a post safety in Byard for a guy that played near the box. So unless Craig Woodson's going to take over the Hawkins part, of the defense, which he did not last year. He was, they really wanted Hawkins down there near the box. He was kind of their blitzing guy if you really go back and watch some of the film. So you essentially have two hash safeties that now you've kind of limited yourself and what you can do box wise. Byard just was not good in the box.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he just got blown up. He's a post safety. He's a hash safety. He's a deep safety. Craig Woodson's kind of in the same mold. And then you have Marcus Jones, who is a coverage slot. So I think that's why they went and got Draymond Jones, because they looked out there and it's like, okay, we don't have edges that can really hold up in the run game, but at least Draymond Jones is like, he's 280 pounds, but can stand up and play defensive end. So he's kind of like a finesse, but he's at 280 pounds. So it's kind of like, yeah, but you still have the size. So I think like and he's a good stunter. He's a good mover, which is what they really lean into. So that makes sense to me. I just thought it was just an odd choice to go with Byard, other than just re-sign Hawkins, who is already there and is 28 years old compared to somebody that's going to be 31, 32.
Yeah. All right. In Tennessee, it is interesting. The Baldies down there, and Brian Dable is like, all right, Wan'Dale Robinson, Cardale Flott, come on down with me. And they bring in John Franklin Myers and Lante Taylor. Basically, if you were decent for a really bad team over the last couple of years, you ended up in Tennessee in this free agency round.
Yeah, and really, they completely rebuilt their defensive line. I mean, Solomon Thomas, John Franklin Myers, Jordan Elliott, Jacob Martin, Jermaine Johnson, and then you're combining with Jeffrey Simmons. If this doesn't scream wide nine Robert Saleh defense, I don't know what does. And I think that Alante Taylor and Cordell Flott got kind of forgotten because the Giants weren't very good, but him and Josh Jobe last year came out of nowhere. These were two guys that were essentially supposed to get cut. They don't get cut, and they end up having really good years, and then they parlay it into a free agent signing to another team. But I do think you look at this he rebuilt that D line. There's only three of them really, left in the two deep. If you look at it from last year, this is a defensive line that needs 8 guys that can roll, and you need to be able to roll through them. Obviously, there's some ties. The John Franklin Meyer paired with Jeffrey Simmons that's gonna cause problems for some teams. Franklin Meyer at Denver, people forget, was like a 6-7 sack guy from the interior. So that's gonna be really good. I don't know what the floor is going to be for this team. They still look. You have, Manor Ridley, who they restructured his contract, and then they signed Wan'Dale Robinson from the Giants. Obviously they're rebuilding the interior defensive line. I think they like Latham. I think they like Dan Moore at their tackle spots. Can you develop? Can Cam Ward develop under Brian Dable? I do believe in Robert Saleh in round 2. And like you mentioned earlier, this is the AFC South.
Mm-hmm.
And if Houston can't figure it out offensively, and let's say the Jaguars regress in year 2, this is a team that you could look up and say, hey, this is a team fighting for at least a winning record.
Right. It is the AFC South. Both Souths just like can't figure it out. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they lose Rashad White to the Washington Commanders, but they bring in Kenneth Gainwell from the Pittsburgh Steelers. They also bring in Alex Anzalone, really good for him. I like him. You mentioned last week, Todd Bowles might just hold on for forever.
Yeah, I got killed. People were so mad about that too.
Me too. I was one of them. I was one of the detractors.
But I just look, he finds a way, because people were like, you can't compare him to Mike Tomlin. I'm like, look, it was tongue in cheek to begin with, but it's just like the offense is going to be potent again, right? We believe in the offense. Defensively, they're rebuilding the defensive line. I still don't know where they're going to get their pressure from. Interior pressure is going to be there. I like Ashawn Robinson, Vita Vea. I think we all like Cansey as a quick 3 who can move outside is going to be good. But Alex Anzalone cleans up one linebacker spot. I never thought Servassier Dennis was really ever that great. Secondary wise, you lose Dean for your second round pick and Benjamin Morrison. So hopefully he's ready to go. I think, Zion McCollum is good. Tyreek Smith, Antonio Winfield, like Jacob Parrish, like these guys are all good. It's like, can we piece it together though?
Mm-hmm.
Because look, they were really good against the run last year. They had no pressure, and it really kind of exacerbated some of the problems that they were having in the back end. I don't know if they necessarily, yes, Alex Anzalone cleans up a lot of stuff in the middle, but I just don't, I don't know how much better they got on defense.
Right. We talked a good bit about Pittsburgh and what they're doing, but another retread head coach with John Harbaugh, the New York Giants. They bring in Tremaine Edmonds and his former player with the Ravens, Isaiah Likely, which is a really good move. Can Jackson Dart stay out of the blue tent? Probably not, but we'll see. How do you feel about the Giants coming in and trying to rebuild and actually and again, I've mentioned this a couple of times, be adults this time with John Harbaugh as their head coach?
Yeah, I think offensively they're going to be okay. Isaiah Likely and Theo Johnson are both moved tight ends. They did bring in Patrick Ricard, who is going to be, the 300-pound fullback. So I think they're going to be able to kind of pick some things up. I think they believe in Scadaboo, who you can live in 11 personnel and be, pretty good. Because let's be honest, Matt Nagy's going to be the offense coordinator. You're going to live in 11 personnel, and your 12 personnel is going to be.
You think he makes the whole season?
I think he does. Look,
right.
I think Harbaugh stabilizes this. They didn't need to add much. The Tremaine Edmonds over Okereke is a little bit interesting to me. Tremaine Edmonds is one of those guys where he's just a physical specimen. He's like almost 6'5", playing inside linebacker, but it's like there's just something missing. I actually thought that they would just keep Micah McFadden with Darius Massow, and I thought that would have been okay as kind of a reset. They're trying to figure out the safety room. You could see that Darius Washington got signed. Jason Pinnock gets signed. I think even Elijah Campbell, who, by the way, like Pinnock and Campbell, Darius Washington, I think they really wanted to have a role last year. I think he ended up getting hurt. So I like Javon Holland. I like Tyler Nubin. Nubin actually didn't play very well last year, but the guy that I think might be the odd man out in all of this is Drew Phillips, who played the light nickel, who I could easily see them dropping Nubin down. Greg Newsome has been on a roller coaster ride the past couple of years. Paulson Adebo, if you remember, is the guy who broke his femur a couple of years. Guys don't typically come back like at a high level like that, but he played well enough at a starter role. So I don't know. I think it stabilizes. Is it going to be game changer? I don't know. I think it's kind of more or less the same. I think they're fighting for 500, if not just, a little bit of a, north of 500.
Mm-hmm. All right. Speaking of north of 500, but they won their division. Carolina Panthers are like, all right, who's the best defensive players? We have so much money for you. Jalen Phillips, Rasheed Walker, offensive lineman Rasheed Walker, but Devin Lloyd as well, come up a little further north from Jacksonville. You've really liked Ejiro Evero. They've starting to show some things. They got to the playoffs this year, really held the feet to the fire of the Rams in about 6 weeks apart from each other or whatever it was. Carolina Panthers adding in a couple of pieces, high-end pieces to their defense and offensive line.
Yeah, and I think that Devin Lloyd, look, this is a defense that has just not been good at linebacker for a couple years now, and then they've had no pass rush. This people probably don't know, but their secondary played relatively well, considering that they had an abysmally low pass rush. And I think that they were able to kind of clean that up. Jalen Phillips gives them a bona fide rusher. I think Devin Lloyd gives them an athletic centerpiece in the middle to answer a lot of their problems. This is a team, though, that needs to draft defense ASAP. And they need to draft a safety early, and they need to draft an edge early. And they need to do that. They need to clean it up. I think that they feel good about their offense. I think the Rasheed Walker is an interesting signing because people were kind of off on him. They were able to get him on a really good deal. I think they like their tackles in Carolina, but this gives you a swing tackle, somebody that maybe you can, bump into guard. They got Luke Fortner to be their center after they lost their center. So it's not a dynamic defense inside, but now that you have Jalen Phillips and maybe Nick Skirton in year 2 can kind of come to life. But this is definitely, they want Trayvon Morgan to play closer to the line of scrimmage, and you can't do that if you don't have another safety. So look for safety to be a high priority in edge in the draft.
All right, Houston. I think this is probably my favorite signing so far, low-key signing, at least Reed Blankenship to the Houston Texans. And who else to talk about it better than the white boy DB expert himself and Cody Alexander? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, this is I didn't know that they could raise their floor anymore. This is definitely raising their floor. I mean, Reed Blankenship has been calling that Fangio system since he was there. They've been trying to get rid of him and they can't. I think that there was one piece in this defense that you could say there was an issue with, it would have been that safety opposite Kalen Bullock. I think everywhere else that gives you a lot of leeway. This is a guy that they can leave in the post. He can call the defense. He knows how to run quarters. He knows how to play the post and cover 3. He can get everybody lined up. This is not a defense that needed a lot of depth, that needed to add a lot of guys. I think the Logan Hall, who gives them from the Buccaneers, it gives them a kind of a quick 3. I think that they kind of solidified it. They got Braden Smith, who I think people were very shocked was able to walk out of the Colts. It gives them a right tackle. I still, we're going to see if Irsay is going to be the second round pick. Look, they've got 2 second round picks, and Blake Fisher and Ursary now at left tackle. They've got to figure that out. So that's another position that I think, they added Trent Brown as well. So it's like last year, this is a position that they need to get figured out. You have been screaming at the heavens to please help CJ Stroud. David Montgomery is going to stabilize that running game too. But yeah, this was a team that didn't need necessarily a lot on defense, but they still need some things on offense. I'm interested to see what that does.
Yeah, some breaking news over the course of the podcast. Darius Big Play Slay retiring after 6 Pro Bowls.
He needed to retire. He had basically become a zone corner to the point where nobody could play, where he could play man. So I'm glad, but man, you talk about a guy who when in his prime was really, really good. And those Eagles defenses definitely loved him when he was on that. So yeah, kudos to him. Great career.
Yep. All right, couple of guys under 30, still looking for some deals. Couple of receivers and some of the big body interior offensive linemen. We talked about Fulele and Becton earlier, Spencer Burford as well. But Juwan Jennings, Hollywood Brown, AJ Epinesa, and I mean Trayvon Diggs is always going to be kind of interesting because of the interception factor, but also he'll probably allow 1,500 yards.
He will not get signed. I guarantee it. He will not get signed. Somebody will get hurt somewhere through minicamp, and they will sign him because they need corner depth, and they will give him a rookie minimum.
All the Diggs brothers. You remember like 3 years ago, it was like, these guys, this might be the best receiver and best corner in the league. And then it was like, oh, yeah, one of them can't cover, and the other one's crazy.
Yeah, well, and it seems like the other one is crazy too. Remember our concussion that we had during the season? Trying to move the TV. You're a millionaire moving your own TV. No one bought that for a second. But it looks like if you need a kind of a swing guard, you've got that left. Hollywood Brown is pushing 30. He kind of, again, a lot of Juwan Jennings is, do we need a tall receiver? You remember they were thinking about giving him all that money. They kind of gave it to Ayuk, and then he had that kind of breakout year, and then just never really kind of came back through. So that's really all we're looking for. That's kind of when we look at ESPN's top 100 free agents, anybody that hasn't signed under 30, you're really not looking at a lot. And typically, as we know, and we've talked about this, like free agency is pretty much done within 24 hours. Like anything after day 2, day 3, it's kind of like, okay, our first and second choices didn't go. So I'm interested to see kind of how all of this plays out. But hopefully what this did is now as we move into draft season, this cleans up who is going to select what teams have made the most moves. That's really what we wanted to go through today and solidified themselves. Either they push their floor up or they're trying to just throw something at the wall and see what sticks. So thanks for joining us on another edition of Let's Talk Ball. Make sure to, anything you want us to talk about, make sure to leave a comment, make sure to subscribe. Thanks again for joining Felix and I on Let's Talk Ball.
Ooh, good grammar. Felix and I.
Hey, I'm working on it, dude. I'm working.